Questions and answers from the works of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. Today's subject is Knowledge, Part 8. The Self, the Divine, the Supreme Reality, the All, the Transcendent, the One in all these aspects is then the object of yogic knowledge. Ordinary objects, the external appearances of life and matter, the psychology of our thoughts and actions, the perception of the forces of the apparent world, can be part of this knowledge, but only in so far as it is part of the manifestation of the One. It becomes at once evident that the knowledge for which yoga strives must be different from what men ordinarily understand by the word. For we mean ordinarily by knowledge an intellectual appreciation of the facts of life, mind, and matter, and the laws that govern them. This is the knowledge founded upon our sense perception and upon reasoning from our sense perceptions, and it is undertaken partly for the pure satisfaction of the intellect, partly for practical efficiency, and the added power which knowledge gives in managing our lives and the lives of others, in utilizing for human ends the overt or secret forces of nature, and in helping or hurting, in saving or ennobling, or in oppressing and destroying our fellow men. This greater consciousness, this higher existence, are not an enlightened or illumined mentality supported by a greater dynamic energy or supporting a purer moral life and character. Their superiority to the ordinary human consciousness is not in degree but in kind and essence. There is a change not merely of the surface or instrumental manner of our being, but of its very foundation and dynamic principle. Yogic knowledge seeks to enter into a secret consciousness beyond mind, which is only occultly here, concealed at the basis of all existence. For it is that consciousness alone that truly knows, and only by its possession can we possess God and rightly know the world and its real nature and secret forces. All this world visible or sensible to us, all too in it that is not visible, is merely the phenomenal expression of something beyond the mind and the senses. The knowledge which the senses and intellectual reasoning from the data of the senses can bring us is not true knowledge. It is the science of appearances, and even appearances cannot be properly known unless we know first the reality of which they are images. This reality is their self, and there is one self of all. When that is seized, all other things can then be known in their truth, and no longer as now only in their appearance. It is evident that however much we may analyze the physical and sensible, we cannot by that means arrive at the knowledge of the self, or of ourselves, or of that which we call God. The telescope, the microscope, the scalpel, the retort, an alembic cannot go beyond the physical, although they may arrive at subtler and subtler truths about the physical. If, then, we confine ourselves to what the senses and their physical aids reveal to us and refuse from the beginning to admit any other reality or any other means of knowledge, we are obliged to conclude that nothing is real except the physical, and that there is no self in us or in the universe, no God within and without, no ourselves even except this aggregate of brain, nerves, and body. But this we are only obliged to conclude because we have assumed it firmly from the beginning, and therefore cannot but circle around to our original assumption. Still, in itself, intellectual analysis can only lead to an arrangement of clear conceptions, perhaps to a right arrangement of true conceptions. But this is not the knowledge aimed at by yoga, for it is not in itself an effective knowledge. A man may be perfected in it and yet be precisely what he was before, except in the mere fact of the greater intellectual illumination, the change of our being at which yoga aims may not at all take place. It is true that intellectual deliberation and right discrimination are an important part of the yoga of knowledge, but their object is rather to remove a difficulty than to arrive at the final and positive result of this path. Our ordinary intellectual notions are a stumbling block in the way of knowledge, for they are governed by the error of the senses, and they found themselves on the notion that matter and body are the reality, that life and force are the reality, that passion and emotion, thought and sense are the reality, and with these things we identify ourselves. And because we identify ourselves with these things, we cannot get back to the real self. Therefore, it is necessary for the seeker of knowledge to remove this stumbling block and to get right notions about himself and the world. For how shall we pursue by knowledge the real self if we have no notion of what it is, and are, on the contrary, burdened with ideas quite opposite to the truth? Therefore, right thought is a necessary preliminary, and once the habit of right thought is established, free from sense error and desire and old association and intellectual prejudgment, the understanding becomes purified and offers no serious obstacle to the farther process of knowledge. Still, right thought only becomes effective when, in the purified understanding, it is followed by other operations, by vision, by experience, by realization. That status of knowledge is then the aim of this path, and indeed of all paths when pursued to their end, to which intellectual discrimination and conception and all concentration and psychological self-knowledge and all seeking by the heart through love and by the senses through beauty, and by the will through power and works, and by the soul through peace and joy, are only keys, avenues, first approaches, and beginnings of the ascent which we have to use and to follow till the wide and infinite levels are attained, and the divine doors swing open to the infinite light.